Vanguard is all about investing in us. Us is over 30 million investors worldwide who believe in low-cost investing and long-term performance. This gives all of us the best chance of investment success. So when we say us, you realise we mean you. Vanguard. Investing in us. Before investing, consider if it's appropriate for you and read the relevant Vanguard disclosure document available at vanguard.com.au. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.
Now, if you've had a look around any of the big blue ribbon seats in New South Wales or Victoria, you would have noticed these Our Voices candidates, these self-styled independents popping up everywhere you look. North Sydney, Mackellar, Wentworth and Riverina in New South Wales, Flinders and Goldstein in Victoria. They've managed to get some pretty big names, though. Carla Zampatti and former Liberal MP John Spender's daughter, Allegra Spender, is running in Wentworth up against Dave Sharma. Former ABC foreign correspondent Zoe Daniel is running in Goldstein against Tim Wilson. But they're being funded by some super rich progressives, like super rich. They're trying to unseat these traditional Liberal members of Parliament simply because I think two reasons. One, they don't like the climate change policies, and two, they didn't like the fact that Malcolm Turnbull got the heave-ho either. It's a similar situation to what we saw back in 2019. I did a story on this for 9 News in the Sydney Morning Herald before the 2019 election, and we called these candidates Independence Inc. And the reason for that is that they're very, very organised. We found out that Simon Holmes à Court, Alex Turnbull, the comedian Dan Ilic, who recently shot to fame for putting an anti-Australian climate change banner in Times Square. But this time around, there is a fund called Climate 200. There is millions and millions of dollars in donations, and it is a serious, serious war chest. But the question is, are these independents fair income independents? Jason Falinski is the Liberal member for Mackellar, who's being taken on by one of them, Dr. Sophie Scamps, as part of this party. Jason, welcome to Drive.
Hey, Chris, how are you, mate?
Jason, I'm assuming the answer, well, I know what the answer is going to be, but what do you think of these people?
Mate, look, they're not independents, and we know that, and you've pretty much highlighted why they aren't. And, you know, they've got one policy, which is around climate change, and they really won't say what the rest of their policies are. They say integrity and women, and that's all well and good, but when it comes to jobs, when it comes to housing, when it comes to our national security, and even when it comes to getting to net zero as quickly and cheaply as possible, they're largely silent, or they don't have any plans to do it.
But they're entitled to have a go.
Mate, that's what democracy is about. But the question is democracy about a contest of ideas, or is it about the size of your wallet? And what Simon Holmes à Court is doing, and a whole lot of people who inherited a whole lot of wealth are doing at the moment, is they are putting together a fund of $20 million. And to be fair, he's pretty blunt about it. He says he wants to have enough MPs in Parliament so that he can dictate to whoever is in government what policies they implement on climate and on a couple of other issues. So that's what he wants to do.
How many does he need to be a fair income force in Canberra?
Well, mate, at the moment you would have to say they're a fair income force. There are, 6 or 7 crossbenchers. The government doesn't have a majority in the lower houses, as you know, and they're pretty much, they are a force. But even now...
Hang on a second. Well, what's Zali Steggall achieved?
Thank you. Great question.
No,
Why don't more people ask that question, Chris?
What has she done for the people of Warringah?
Great question. Why don't more people ask that question?
So how can they be a force if she's done nothing?
Exactly, because they don't understand. They say things like, "I'll just cross the floor," and they don't understand that democracies work on when you are able to persuade a majority of people that change is necessary. They're not about actually persuading people. They're about forcing people to do things. And what they are promising in this election, because they don't have policies across things like jobs, things like housing, things like national security, and things like how to get to net zero.
But hang on, but they're also
chaos and dysfunction.
They're also traditionally your people. They're your voters. They're Liberal Party people.
Mate,
I guarantee you that they're not members of the union movement.
No, that's the line they run.
So why did you lose them?
If you want to look at the campaign in my area, It is run by a group of people who are, frankly speaking, have been long-term members of the Greens, were former members of the Labor Party, have consistently backed left-wing independents over and over again in terms of what they wanted to achieve. So they've got a history of backing left-wing causes. So when they say they're disaffected Liberals, it is just part of the packaging and part of the sloganeering and part of the marketing campaign.
I reckon they'd be Liberal Party members if Malcolm Turnbull was still the Prime Minister, though, Jason.
Well, then why weren't they, mate? Why weren't they? I mean, you ask people like Zali Steggall, when have you ever voted Liberal? You know, in 2011, as you know, when she was based in Manly, the candidate was Mike Baird. Pretty hard to get more progressive than Mike Baird in the Liberal Party or generally in Parliament. And
I don't know about his social views. They weren't all that progressive.
Mike Baird's social views are very progressive.
Well, he never backed gay marriage.
That's true. He didn't back same-sex marriage, but he did back refugees very strongly. He did back subsidies to a whole bunch of other things. His record on animal welfare, as you know, probably was the thing that finally tipped him over the edge and why he resigned. His social and views on other matters are really progressive, I think. And, you know, Zali Steggall was given an opportunity in 2011 of voting for Mike Baird or the party of Eddie Obeid and Ian MacDonald, and she still didn't vote for Mike Baird. So it's pretty difficult for them to assert that they would be members of the Liberal Party, because when Malcolm Turnbull was the Prime Minister and was the leader, they still weren't members of the Liberal Party, and they still didn't vote for the Liberal Party.
They've got big dollars, though. Do you think is Simon Holmes, do they believe in this climate change cause so much? Because this is one of the things that gets me, Jason. We've discussed climate change ad nauseum in this country for the best part of 10 years, and it has never once shifted an election. People say they care about it in public polling and private polling, but when it comes to the polling booth, they vote with their hip pocket. We all know that.
Well, as you know, the federal government has signed up to net zero by 2030. We've updated our
took you long enough.
Net zero by 2030 would get everyone very excited. Net zero by 2050. We've updated our projections on 2030 to 35% reduction. We've already reduced our emissions by 20%. The point is, at this point in time, we are now contesting this space in very sort of, we are contesting it over, little bits about the best way of doing it. Now, we found out that Labor's modelling had a mistake in it. We understand that there are...
At least they've got modelling.
Sorry?
At least they've got modelling.
And that's the other thing, right? Both sides now have modelling. Like, when you think about...
Do you want a ticker tape parade?
In 10 years... Sorry?
Do you want a ticker tape parade? It's taken 10 years, Jason.
No. Over 10 years, I think the progress in this discussion over 10 years, and this goes to your point, if these guys are really serious about climate change, why would you be standing against the very people in the Liberal Party who brought about a change in government policy to net zero by 2050, who are consistently putting pressure on public policy to reduce emissions, who are consistently standing at the gate and saying, no, we are not going to allow subsidies of legacy industries or taxpayers' money to be used to build coal-fired power stations? Why are they the people you're standing candidates against if you're honestly and seriously in favour of action on climate change, as opposed to just being a power play to buy Parliament?
Jason, I've just got Anthony from Mossman on the line here. He reckons the only reason that Zali Steggall's the member is because Tony Abbott was in the seat. Is that right?
100% right. If Tony Abbott didn't run in the last election, there would be no Zali Steggall. There was the Vote Tony Out campaign that they wanted to put a high-profile candidate in the seat to knock Tony off, because it's a Liberal seat. Majority of the people who turned against the Liberal Party in the last election were Liberal Party voters who didn't want Tony Abbott. That's the reason why that Zali Steggall's there.
Jason Falinski, I think Anthony from Mossman's spot on there, mate.
So, Anthony, why do you think the majority of people didn't want Tony as their member anymore?
Because they had enough of him. Jason, I grew up in a political family in Mossman. My old man was one of Tony Abbott's best mates. And the sentiment there in Mossman was they just didn't want him. They were over Tony Abbott. They just said, we wanted a fresh face as a Liberal candidate. And they knew it, and that's why this Vote Tony campaign came out, and that's why they put Zali Steggall. They needed a high-profile person to knock the Liberal Party off, and it worked.
So do you think, Anthony, this time round with a fresh candidate, assuming they've got the right profile, share your values, etc., and with our changes to climate policy, that you'll see people voting Liberal again?
They could, and the reason, look, it happened in the last election with Dave Sharma. They put Karen Phelps in. The next election came, Dave Sharma came back in. A lot of the voters turned back to the Liberal Party. I tell you, and the word now is, if Gladys would have run in Warringah, she was the best hope of knocking off Zali Steggall.
I think he's right there, Jason. But no Gladys, no Warringah. And I think Zali Steggall will get back in. But I'm just going to finish it here, Mr. Falinski.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe.
You sound worried.
Worried about? Losing
McKellar?
Oh, okay. Well, mate, I don't take anything for granted.
How worried are you?
Mate, there's no point worrying about these things. The thing you got to focus on is doing the job, delivering the outcomes, representing the people, and being accessible. And they're the things I focus on every day, and let the cards fall where they may.
Well, you know what? I think you're doing a good job in McKellar. A very, very good job. And I want to thank you for your time, because I appreciate being a good sport and taking a couple of calls without knowing that was coming. But thank you for your time, Jason. And I agree with you on the independents. They need to be a bit more transparent about what they're trying to achieve. Thanks so much.
Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.